Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. We talked about this recently. Concerns about some of these leftist groups that are eco-supremacist in orientation, trying to influence the judiciary. The Climate Judiciary Project is one such organization. The Environmental Law Institute, another, offer a curriculum that's been used to educate, quotation marks, scare quotes, nearly 2,000 judges on the impact of climate change. In a letter that the House Judiciary Committee sent to these organizations upon launching an investigation, CJP's efforts, Climate Judiciary Project, have, quote, appear to have the underlying goal of predisposing federal and state judges in favor of plaintiffs alleging injuries from the manufacturing, marketing, or sale of fossil fuel products, quote unquote. That was a letter that was sent to the president of the Environmental Law Institute. And there are examples that have been provided in reporting by the Daily Caller that I'm referencing here that speak to such judges that, may be oriented that way to begin with, and certainly encouraged by the sort of activism, ex parte activism going on with these organizations and having federal judges as their targets. The other part of this with respect to these judges is that some of them that were sort of brandishing their affiliation as a credential, or perhaps this was mutually beneficial, and also allowing these organizations to use their names to further their agenda. Well, now they scrub their names from these organizations. So if there was nothing nefarious or even something that would give the appearance of impropriety afoot here, then why would the judges now under scrutiny seek to publicly disassociate from these organizations? For more on some of this climate lawfare that is afoot, pleased to be joined by Jason Isaac, CEO and founder of American Energy Institute and former Texas state rep. Jason, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's great to be on. I don't think the Environmental Law Institute is going to invite me to any office parties anytime soon. We broke the research on this, really published a report last year exposing all this and using publicly available data to do it. And you're right, now they're scrubbing websites because they've had a bad 12 months because we've shined a light on the cockroaches, if you will, and they're running scared, really exposing the nefarious actions that they're taking, trying to taint judges around the world.
I raised this issue to an energy analyst at the American Enterprise Institute, and he was sort of lukewarm about it. And he said, well, it may have an impact, but the reality is that most of these sort of silly lawsuits filed against fossil fuel companies for all the alleged damage they did trying to bankrupt them, which is climate lawfare. They're not going anywhere. They're being dismissed. So how much impact really are these activist groups having with federal judges?
Well, I would say it's significant because, yes, five or six cases have been dismissed this year, the latest being Charleston, South Carolina, but there are still over 24 cases playing out where you have these municipalities. It could be a city, a county, some sort of subdivision of the state, or actually a state suing companies like Exxon, the American Petroleum Institute, and other large oil and gas companies, like in Hawaii. This is still happening in Hawaii, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who's overseeing the case in Hawaii, has participated in Environmental Law Institute events. He has endorsed the Climate Judiciary Project, refuses to recuse himself, and so he's like the one judge that we know that's attended these because he's made public comments about doing so. And so you really just need one case to be, I guess, unsuccessful in the eyes of humanity, but successful for the plaintiff's bar, these trial lawyers that are suing these companies. You need one case to go through, and it really sets a precedent. Even if it's gone through on appeal, the dominoes could start falling, and it would drive up the cost of energy massively with some of these, multi-billion-dollar settlements. Oregon seeking damages that exceeds their annual state budget. I mean, you just have cases like that where if one of them progresses, it's going to set a bad precedent.
Yeah, so you have, and of course you have leftist state attorneys general who are looking at the fossil fuel industry the way that they looked at the tobacco industry a generation ago.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You've got these plaintiffs' lawyers that come to them. The big firm in San Francisco is Scher Edling, that has a really close association with the Environmental Law Institute. It's amazing how incestuous it is. You would think it'd be a conflict of interest, and likely is. And I think that's why the Senate, with Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, having hearings weeks ago over this very thing, and now the House beginning their investigations over these organizations. But there's one law firm, San Francisco, that will go to these municipalities, these cities, these states, and say, hey, guess what? We'll take this on for you for free. We'll cover all the legal costs, because they're getting left-wing donors, dark money coming into their coffers to fund their efforts, because there's certainly costs and time involved on their part. Much like the case with Puerto Rico, where they had offered Puerto Rico, we'll come in pro bono, we'll do this, we want to share the settlement. And then fortunately, elections happened last November, leadership changed in Puerto Rico. I sent a letter to the governor, I believe it was in May of this year, asking her to withdraw their nuisance lawsuits. And they did. A week later, they dismissed. And of course, I got blamed, which means I get to take the credit. I love it. But they did. That's one of those cases. And it was the same San Francisco-based law firm that are in many of these cases around the country.
And I mean, has there been any, just with respect to judiciary, because I mean, this is an area that's potentially rife with corruption. Other than maybe fellow travelers gathering with fellow travelers and, taking their cues, so to speak, or just discussing legal strategy. I'm talking about judges and these activists. I mean, is there evidence that these groups are having real influence on those that are otherwise not inclined to be on board?
Oh, I would absolutely assume so. It's around 50 events that the Environmental Law Institute Climate Judiciary Project has hosted, tainting over 2,000 judges since 2018. And that's when the record stopped, because we published the report. They stopped telling people when they were going to do these junkets, bringing judges in, so-called giving them, I'm sure they're getting continuing education credits that they're required to get for to maintain their association with the bars. It's mind-boggling how they can pull these people together, build relationships with them, and influence the outcome of cases before cases have even made it to their courts. And so I would say it's certainly having an impact, as we've seen in Hawaii and other states. Fortunately, like I said, 5 cases been completely dismissed because they are just egregious abuses of the law. They're trying to do climate lawfare, to enact the Green New Deal through litigation, and thinking that companies are attributable to changes in weather is absolutely absurd. The South Carolina judge agreed with that case and recently dismissed that one.
And the other piece of this is that some of these groups that provide the web, the infrastructure, if you will, supporting these efforts that you're describing, are funded by the government. Here we go again. And Fox had a piece on it this week that you were cited in as well, talking about the web of dark money that's tied to Obama and the Dems. And I know Lee Zeldin is doing yeoman's work trying to claw back some of that backdoor Green New Deal cash. But, where does that stand with, hey, you want to be an activist and you want to pursue Chicken Little energy policies, free country, but I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to be forced to pay for it as a taxpayer, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, and it's fortunate because of this continued investigation, you are seeing the exposure of where the money is coming from. Now, there are certainly dark money, and it's very hard to determine where the money is coming from. People connected to networks, the Energy Foundation China, which has rebranded as U.S. Energy Foundation, which is kind of funny. It's like they drop the China at the end of their name, add U.S. at the beginning to sound actually American when most of their employees are in Beijing. They get 501c3 protection status from the IRS. That needs to be investigated, and I think will be part of it, because should they really be protected by the IRS to just hide their donors that are primarily Chinese citizens that are affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. And then, lo and behold, 23 attorneys general, the Montana Attorney General Knudsen led an effort and got 22 of his counterparts to sign on around the country because the EPA is giving grants to the Environmental Law Institute. It was about 13% of their budget in 2023. It was under 10% of their budget in 2024. It's not a significant, maybe it would be for a person, but from the federal government budget, you're talking about $1 million a year or around that range. So it's not significant when it comes to the budget expenses of the federal government, but still we're using our taxpayer dollars to fund a significant portion of this organization that is weaponizing the courts against human prosperity.
Yeah, and I mean, and it adds up, $1 million here, $1 million there, or $1 billion here, $1 billion there, as it goes now. But Zeldin is trying to pull back $20 billion worth of this new Green Deal largesse that was distributed in the 11th hour of the Biden administration.
Yeah, huge ruling this week out of a federal court saying that he has that authority to pull back those grants, billions of dollars to organizations that aren't qualified to receive them. Groups like Stacey Abrams, who had raised like $100, and then all of a sudden, in the waning days, the last 74 days of the Biden administration, they hand out $96 billion to their friends and allies to pump in the coffers of Democrat organizations and donors. And so this is a great ruling coming out of the court that's going to claw back billions of dollars. I love it that we're actually having a government that's concerned with the taxpayer dollars and not just handing out money to their friends like the prior administration.
But are you concerned that siding with fossil fuel companies props up totalitarian regimes? Because I was reading recently that climate change could take down both the Taliban in Afghanistan as well as the Ayatollahs in Tehran. I don't know how exactly, but that's what I'm told.
Yeah, I think over millions of years, all the continents are going to come back together, and that's probably going to take down the Iranian regime.
You just have to be patient.
Like don't make me try to go celebrate climate change and see what I can do to make it happen faster. But, I live a high carbon lifestyle. I wish the rest of the world could too. There's no correlation between CO2 emissions and a changing climate. And that's why I'm so grateful Lee Zeldin over at EPA is working to rescind the endangerment finding. This crazy Obama finding by deep state bureaucrats that said that CO2 emissions are a danger to human health and the environment, when it's actually quite the opposite. They're necessary for life on the earth, and try living in a place without CO2. So I just encourage people to keep living the high carbon lifestyle.
Well, as one carbon-based life form to another, we appreciate your efforts. Jason Isaac, CEO and founder of the American Energy Institute, former Texas state legislator as well. Congratulations on your new map, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jason, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And Jason Isaac joined us in the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back to Ask Hassleus.
I believe in aliens, ghosts, and UFOs, but I don't believe you.
Huh?
I'm convinced the Earth is flat and the moon landing was faked.
Okay.
But when you say Hassleus Mattress don't have no employees, well,